High School in historic Wellsburg, West Virginia. WTRF proudly presents Ohio Valley Tonite with Nathan Marshall. Tonight's guest, the Andy Warhol Museum.
Welcome to another edition of Ohio Valley Tonite. And tonight we are joined by the Curator of Education at Pittsburgh's Andy Warhol Museum, Tressa Varner. Tressa, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you coming in. And Tressa, when people think of Andy Warhol, sadly, they think narcotics as much as they do artwork, it seems. So explain to us as an audience here what you do as a curator of education at the Andy Warhol Museum, because most people would probably think that you might be nothing more than a glorified babysitter for druggies, which is sad because, of course, you're not.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Actually, I've never heard that, but
Yeah.
I think that's
a weird terminology.
It is, but it's it's funny. Actually, we hold quite a large collection of Andy Warhol's work, and also an extremely large archive of his all the material related to his artwork and all his correspondence. My team, we create material that will help to kind of create an opening or a pathway into the artwork. And so as a single artist museum, what we try and focus on is not only his artwork and the fact that he was this famous pop artist, but we try to look at the entire practice of him, of his work. So it would be not only his artwork that he created, but the reasons why behind the artwork. So conceptually, what he was going for, as well as the processes and the silkscreen printing and the actual work itself.
Well, many of Andy Warhol's works today are highly collectible and worth a ton of money. For instance, there was a 1963 painting I could think of called 8 Elvises that even went for $100 million, as Dr. Evil might say, right? What makes the works of Andy Warhol so valuable?
Well, he really arguably is one of the most important artists of the late 20th century. It's also the fact that the people he was painting, like Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe, I mean, they were really famous. So here you have a really famous artist who's making these portraits that when they were made in the 60s, they were controversial. And he's making them of celebrities. And so they do catch quite a high price. Yeah,
and it was interesting to me when I was looking up, researching information on Andy. He actually started collecting these pictures and cards of famous people when he was a kid. And that bled into when he's an adult, which is...
Yeah, here, when he was in Pittsburgh, he was always very interested in celebrity. And he would always love to go to the movies. You know, Hollywood was so glamorous. So here you got this young kid in Pittsburgh going to the movies and seeing this Hollywood glamour. And his brothers said when he would come home, if you really want to get to know these actresses a little bit better, if you write them a letter, they'll send you a photograph of them. And so he did that. And so at the museum, we have this really large scrapbooks of a lot of these movie star portraits.
Did he have any celebrities that he was infatuated with that people aren't familiar with, like Elvis and, of course, Marilyn Monroe were familiar with? But was there anyone that was kind of off-color or something people wouldn't think of?
Truman Capote.
Oh, okay. Definitely.
When he was young, Shirley Temple.
Yeah, if you don't love Shirley Temple, you must be Satan.
Yeah, probably.
That's what I think. Well, when Andy Warhol was a third grader, of course he was born in Pittsburgh, and that's the big thing. He was diagnosed in third grade with a nervous system disease which caused involuntary movements in his extremities, and he becomes a hypochondriac from that. He actually was afraid of doctors and hospitals. He turned into an outcast at school, evidently, and he was basically bounded to his mother. And most people would hear all that and say that was a horrible, horrible childhood. But he later attributed this period in his life, which most people would think was a terrible time in their life, he attributed that to as a very important development to his personality, his skill set, and his preferences. So I was wondering how much of his childhood and Pittsburgh itself attributed to the person that Andy Warhol became, and what was his relationship with his hometown like? Because I'm not sure.
Well, Andy, you're right. When he was a child, he did have this type of nervous condition, and he did spend some time at home. He developed quite a tight bond with his mother. His mom actually moved up to New York in the 50s to live with him and helped him create some of his commercial art. So,
oh wow!
Yeah, he put her to work. So you know,
reverse sweatshop.
I'm telling you, you know, he Pittsburgh was really influential. I think number one because of Pittsburgh is this industrial town, and Warhol was definitely exposed to a factory style of making. And then in the 60s, he set up his studio as a factory, and he was mass producing his artwork, which was so controversial. And so he, had people, he paid people to help him make his work, much like products are created today.
So Andy Warhol was IKEA before IKEA was IKEA.
One could say that, I think you're right.
Maybe, I guess. Well, seemingly the name Andy Warhol is synonymous with strange stories. There's a story I found, I thought this was one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. In June 3rd, 1968, a lady named Valerie Solanas, founder and sole member of SCUM, Society for Cutting Up Men, she was the only member. It's not funny because it's kind of scary what happens, but walked into Andy Warhol's studio, the factory, shot him 3 times in the chest. They thought he was dead.
Yep.
And then at the last second, they said, well, let's just cut him open and massage his heart. He ended up coming back to life or whatever, and he lived until 1987, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the strangest story? That's a strange story.
Well,
is there any stories that top that one about Andy?
That's horrific. That was a horrific time.
Very much so.
That bullet did a lot of damage, actually. I think really it's sort of what we don't know about Andy Warhol because he had this very public persona, because he was a celebrity.
Yeah.
And he also had this very private side that he kept hidden from most people, even some of his friends. What most people don't really know about is the fact that he went to church every Sunday. He was a Byzantine Catholic. Him and his mother would go to church in New York. He was raised in a very pious family. They went to church every Sunday, and they, observed the Sunday rules of no working. And on the holidays, like say for example on Christmas, he would go and work the soup lines and at the church and feed the homeless. So it's just really Warhol's only his close friends and his family knew about that.
The Andy Warhol Museum is noted as the largest American museum for a single artist, which is really cool because it's in Pittsburgh. It's larger than that of the great American artists George O'Keeffe, Jackson Pollock, Norman Rockwell, and a former student of mine and a Garrett College student right now, Jenny Schaefer, is here with us today, and she has a question about that.
As an art fan myself, what makes the Andy Warhol Museum a must-see for fans of art?
Well, I think what's so amazing about our collection is our archival material. Andy Warhol was a pack rat. He didn't throw anything out. And so not only do we have the famous paintings on the walls, but we have all the support material and the original sources from when he was creating the works. For example, with the Elvis Presley's, like you brought up, we have all the original source material where he, got the image for Elvis and how he made it, and all his notes to the printers and stuff. And so it helps us to see a bigger picture of the artist and the time period in which he was making work.
Well, again, I want to thank my guest today, Tressa Varner, Curator of Education at Pittsburgh's Andy Warhol Museum. And you can learn more about Tressa or the Andy Warhol Museum by visiting
our website at warhol.org.
Warhol.org. Pretty easy. And for Ohio Valley Tonight, this has been Nathan Marshall.